Hello, I'm Randy Purcell. Welcome to Unvarnished. Our guest today is Anne Goetze. Welcome, Anne. Glad to have you here.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So let's jump into what kind of artwork do you create?
Over the years, I have created a lot, and it's been in phases. So I've always had an interest in photography early on. Of course, this is back in the day with film and transparencies and really just the love of that. My father was a photographer, and his father was a photographer. So I was surrounded by those things, those influences early on, and it just kind of slowly seeps in. So that interest of photography was early on. And then I began painting also. And I think so many things with art, it just kind of goes together. And then you find some things that you want to start to explore. So I really followed photography, I would say, at first.
Right.
It's also more immediate.
Yes.
You know, the painting takes time. And I went to school with drawing and all of that through school. Dabbled with college.
Yeah.
And couldn't get through a lot with the algebra. Got a little frustrated there and really just wanted to pursue art. I think I just couldn't get to the art fast enough, and maybe a tutor would have been a good thing. But I just really kind of wanted to pursue
If you already know what you want to do, it's kind of hard to get sidetracked on something you don't enjoy.
Yes, I think
even though an education is worth it, it's still, if you already know, I think all of us would have benefited from following our passions when we was much younger, but it's never too late, right? And of course you've been doing this for a long time, and you live in a beautiful area here in Tennessee. Is that correct?
I do now. I live out in this little pocket of what's left of the country outside of Nashville, and it was more remote, but as everything, it's getting a little more crowded. So I think also with the photography, even when I moved out there, what I gathered photography-wise started turning into recording history, unbeknownst. But it is just kind of being in that place at that time. And, you know, we're products of our environment. So once again, that was influencing my life and my art. And as I documented that, it was also recording history. Yeah.
And you talk about photographs and how they're quick, but the great thing about them too, I know you like to do plein air painting, but with photographs you can always revisit and paint an image from a photograph you took 20 years ago. There's a lot of benefit to that.
Yeah, I cannot remember this quote, so I don't want to steal a quote, but it was something that photography was called, it's a slice of a moment. And that really, truly does capture something where with painting, it's not that immediate. You know, you keep trying to recreate that moment, but the photography is that moment, that slice that happens.
True. Yeah, the painting is capturing a period of time just because you can't, like you said, do it immediately. Things change, lighting changes, the wind changes, especially when you're outside.
Yes, and then even in the studio, as we're working as artists too, you know, there's more diligence, I think, that goes to creating that slice, creating that moment. Two different mediums, but also the same. You know, we're working with light.
Yes, light's such an important part of any artwork, I would think, or most artwork. Yeah, it can really highlight things and make them more prominent, or make them more mysterious by not being as prominent.
Right, the emotion, right?
Yes.
The moodiness.
Evoking emotion.
Yeah, those great black and whites from years ago. Those, sometimes the moodier the better.
Yeah, they had to be simple because they had to get to the point. And I don't know, do you feel like today we've gotten away from that? Things are more complicated?
Well, I think there's still that immediate gratification that comes from photography, even though the cell phones are being used, which even digital, when it first came out, I was not that impressed.
Right.
but now it blows my mind.
It is amazing.
You know, so, you know, and we keep learning too. But with the cell phone and with photography, there's still the joy of working with a big camera. You know, when you're looking through something, it isolates things that are going on around you.
But you're in your own environment.
And sometimes with the cell phone or with the phone, with whatever you want to call your apparatus that you're using, you're holding it away from you. That, to me, is not as intimate.
Right.
And there's reflections, and you're not concentrating maybe so much on your composition.
There's a lot of outside
noise.
Noise,
Noise in a lot of ways that we say that. Noise, now digital, there's the word noise. So it really helps to isolate some of those other things, just like other things going on in life too, when it all becomes clutter and stuff too. It gets into everything that we're doing. Pretty soon, it feels like chaos.
So I was lucky enough to come to your studio space a couple weeks ago, and it's a beautiful space. The landscape is beautiful. Like you said, it's kind of changing around you just because of the popularity of the area. A lot more building going on. But you still have a nice, quiet retreat. So when you go in the studio, and I'm assuming you work do you work in the studio on a regular regiment? Do you have routine, or is it just when you feel inspired?
Sometimes I wish I had routine.
Yeah.
Because that would help. You know, if I could be, okay, it is now time to go to work, you know. There's other influences, though, now, as an artist, too, is things that we have to do that's on the computer. There's more of this self-promotion stuff, all those things. So it's not as easy, I think. It's just like, you just don't go because there's those other things that take it. It's still part of the business. It's still part of what it is that we do. But that is part of the workday now.
Right.
And it's adjusting and then trying to get, and luckily my studio is away from the house. Even if it's 12 steps, it's still moving away and going into a different atmosphere.
Right, it's a new space.
And that really is, to me, very important.
Do you do your administrative type work in your studio space also, or do you keep it?
No, I do not, because then I think I would feel that pull.
Yeah. Because there are a lot of little things that most people don't realize that artists have to do. If you're not planning out at least a year in advance, you're behind. Because a lot of shows or just contacting galleries or other opportunities, you have to have artist statements, the bio, the imagery, the plan of how the show is going to look or however. Those all have to be done in advance and submitted, and it's not something you knock out real fast.
Right, and that's in stages too. And even as we maybe think about as we were writing our artist statements, I'll be dwelling and chewing on something like that and then go back and change it. Or maybe a year passes and I feel differently about maybe the body of work that I'm doing and to just kind of revamp.
Do you write all your own artist statements?
I do.
Bio? I have a friend that helps me. Writing has never been one of my strong points, so it's nice to have somebody that can translate my thoughts. So I just write down, this is what I'm thinking, and I just throw it on paper, and he's done a great job of taking my words and reorganizing them and adding some more color.
Yes, actually, that does help. Well, I will have someone, of course, read.
Yeah, you have to have the proof.
Where are you going here?
But he does a lot of reworking for me, just because. And maybe I'm not as bad as I think I am, but I feel more comfortable having somebody kind of shorten my sentences, because I tend to.
We go on our little
I go over
tangents.
and over and over trying to get to that one word, and he knows that one word.
Yes, exactly.
It shortens things a bit.
Well, and then think about how we're mentored anyway. We don't just like learn it on our own.
That's right.
There's no overnight success. There's none of that. We're learning from other artists.
We are, and it's so. It's funny you bring that up. I was talking to Robert Bruce Scott earlier. And that's one thing that came up is the importance of artists to network together and with people outside the art world, because you never know when you're going to make that connection with somebody that's going to help you get the next opportunity, or they're going to tell you something about your work that maybe helps you figure out that missing piece.
Exactly.
And one thing leads to another, and you gotta be ready for when those opportunities come about.
And to help critique,
Mm-hmm.
even with our work.
Sometimes we do need that.
And we get stuck on things, and then it needs a fresh eye. It needs someone else to look at it. And sometimes those things are very like plain when someone tells us that, you know. So
and have somebody you trust that will give you an honest opinion. Not that you're looking for somebody to tell you
well,
how
if you're
to
looking
make
for
your
praise, then you're gonna have to ask your mother. But if you really want someone to be honest, and you're gonna ask
That's
another
right.
artist, right?
Ask
That is
another
gonna
artist.
be like.
Yeah.
So I do feel like I've been very blessed to be mentored through the years.
Awesome.
I worked with a portrait photographer here in Nashville, Marion Ward. That was like my first job when I came here. I was a retouch artist
Oh, that's
with
right.
him, and
yeah.
this was all on, you know, with the portraits and all those chemicals and lacquers and sprays and things like that. So I'm happy to still be around. But he was a great mentor. And that was film, right? And then switching over to digital too. But so I learned retouching by hand, and then I started doing that on the album covers on Music Row, working with Charlie McCallan. And he was a fantastic retouch artist. And he came from back in the advertising agency work, where everything was drawn, even before the photography.
Oh, wow.
So I was learning by these people that had already been through and down that road.
Trailblazers.
Yes, yeah. And that's a wonderful education to get. You know,
Yeah,
you're working in it every day, it's, you know, and you're learning.
Yeah, to see the change of, you know, the progression. You know, as humans, we're constantly looking for easier ways to do things or better ways to do things, I guess would be
Well,
better.
both.
Yeah, true. Yeah, we want it to be faster so we can be more productive, but we also want a better product. And sometimes we get that by making shortcuts that you know, are digital or however.
Oh, yeah, and we learn, like, with whatever it is that we're trying to get to at the end of how we go about. You know, it might be that zigzag to get there.
That's true, and sometimes I wonder as an artist myself about, you know, there are things I could do more with my hand, but I don't want to waste the time because I want to get to the part that I enjoy, the part that I feel like that makes the impact. So, yeah, I think we all somehow use technology to our advantage in those cases.
Yeah, so well, we need to. Truly, that's embracing it all.
Yeah.
To see what works and what
This
doesn't
is our
work.
time, and that's what's our surroundings, as
It's
you
part
talked
of
about earlier.
it's part of the experimenting
surroundings.
too.
Yeah.
You know, and as things have gone from one format to another with the digital too, there's been the challenges too of how do we get the product that we did like before.
Yeah.
And now that things have changed, you know, the paper's changed, all of those mediums that we use that are not available, harder to find, you know,
Right.
and then once again, you're experimenting all over again.
Right.
And then that leads to something else.
I think being an artist, if you're not experimenting, you're not allowing yourself to have fun. That's one thing I try to allow myself to do occasionally, is get out of the routine of creating my art as I know it and throwing in some different element that makes it more of a challenge.
Yeah.
And then maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but I'll learn something every time I do that. And it could lead to no telling what if it works out.
Right, it might lead to the burn pile, which I've got one of those.
Of course, I work in beeswax, so I just take the heat gun to it.
Oh, you can just melt it away, right?
I can melt it down.
I'll
that's
scrape
right.
it, burn it.
So family, the being an artist is kind of a family thing. 3 generations of photographers, now 4 with Nathan.
Now 4 with my son, who's really taken off over the years with photography and film.
Yes, beautiful.
His passion is with birds, so you know he's found something to zone in on, you know, and then perfect that. And my father with 5 girls. He
Oh,
was
wow.
a hospital administrator, but he enjoyed photography.
That was
But
his-
to make a living doing
Yeah.
that, he was probably like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's a lot.
he kept his real job.
So
was
yeah, being a
fantastic.
photographer was probably a nice retreat for him. A way
Yes.
to escape the stress.
And he had actually if anyone remembers, the Marshall oils, that was used before color photography for the tinting of photographs.
Really?
And if maybe people will recall that with the portraits, maybe of their parents or grandparents, but that was done on the portraits before color photography. So he had that set, so I dabbled with that, which led to not only tinting the photographs, but then also to what I'm doing now, which is the painted photograph, the hand-painted photograph. But it's a process.
Yeah.
You know, it's not embellishing, it's not, you know,
Right.
but it starts with this process, and it goes even way back to before color photography. So
And it's funny
taking
that-
old and bringing it into
Yeah.
the new.
And you did that with the touch-ups, as you just discussed earlier.
Right.
And now your paintings have just such a luminous feel to them. I mean, it's really nice seeing how. I don't know what the word is here. It's a photograph could never capture the way you capture it with your paintings.
The same, yes,
of
well,
words,
it's taking something and bringing something else out of it, because I will sometimes see those photographs as paintings, definitely not as like a color photograph, which is why I enjoyed painting them,
Right.
because I don't see those colors
You're not distracted by the
that maybe are recorded in a straight color photograph.
yeah.
So it's the impressionism and realism put together.
And that's kind of how the eye works, right? When we look at something, our focus is on an area, then you have everything else is like an impressionist painting. It's kind of a little
Right,
blurry.
right.
Maybe that's what draws me into your paintings, is being able to see that. I know on your Pray to Love series, there's some of those that really focus on, say, the cross. And then everything else it's there. When you look at the cross, it's almost like everything comes into focus, but
That is, well,
You're-
instead of
you're
usually like
pinpointing.
with portraits, right, it goes to usually the eyes, right?
right.
But also with the photography with that is not something that is been manipulated, because I just use natural light.
Okay.
And then even so, the photograph is a photograph, and then I work from that. So it's not manipulated in Photoshop or something like that.
It's your hand that's doing it without a clicker.
It's all by hand, yeah. Yeah.
The paintbrush.
So that can be a nice surprise though, too,
Yes.
you know.
So yeah, and how do you, when you're taking a photograph, are you already envisioning the way it's going to be painted? Or is that something you look at later and you revisit and then decide?
It might probably be a combination of both. Sometimes I'll choose that photograph in particular because of a certain reason and maybe see part of it, but then as you're diving into it, it could change.
Yeah.
And sometimes I have to reel it back into maybe what that original thought was. And I don't even pay attention to how long something takes.
Right.
When it's
Yeah, I love your
finished, it's
quote about
finished.
that.
Oh, yes, I know. Like someone, when they ask, well, how long did it take to do it? Now I can say 61 years, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Give my age, but I can say that's how long it took.
No, your quote was, if I knew how long it would take, I would probably disappoint me or
Oh, but yeah, really be
depress me.
depressed.
Yeah, I would be depressed if I knew how long it took. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good way to put it.
And you really can't put that time. Sometimes even, you know, when you really feel like, oh, you're so inspired or you're just on fire about something, maybe it just goes fast and you're
Yeah,
not even
time
paying
flies.
attention to time.
And it's so hard because not every day is a productive day in the studio. Just because you're in the studio and you put in 6 or 7 hours, you may have only worked 2 or 3
Yes, that were productive.
that were productive. I mean,
There's a self-discipline that comes in on that. We have,
Yes.
you know, to just perseverance, right? We have to persevere through that, whether you feel like doing it or not. But I think that's with anything in life.
yeah, I think at first for me, after leaving MTSU and starting my career as an artist, it was real easy to stay busy. I wouldn't say I was productive, but I was so excited about my new career. I was doing everything and creating some cool things. You know, I look back now, most of them were terrible, but I was at least just into it.
Yeah.
I was creating almost every day. And then over time, that focus changed from doing everything to doing a couple of things. Then I learned where my strengths and my weaknesses were. And all of a sudden, okay, this is who I am as an artist. Not that I don't experiment and try new things, but I at least have more focus now.
True. And over time, you develop a style.
Yeah.
Where we're not just maybe creating or something that inspires us, or we're looking at someone else's work and love that work.
Right.
And then you want to work like that.
Yeah.
And then you slowly over time will develop hopefully like your own style. And that's really the combination of everything that we've garnered over time.
Yeah.
And, and experience.
And it's so hard to see that as a young artist. When you're first starting out, you don't understand the style thing. But it all comes from creating over and over and over again. Eventually, you show up in your work.
Yes, hopefully. And then also to get yourself out of the way sometimes, too, with what you're doing.
Maybe that's it more than anything, is you're not just showing yourself, but it's without effort. You're not
let the
forcing it.
creative process and, let go and let God, truly, because I
Yes.
know that that's where my true inspiration really comes from, and just kind of let that flow.
Right.
And then it's not about me,
Yeah.
let it be about something that's so much better and bigger.
This is my purpose, and
It gives me purpose.
it gives you purpose. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think every artist needs to be driven by something outside of themselves.
Yeah.
And some of us don't understand what that is.
Well, I think that's the whole human quest, right? Is that
Right.
we have purpose to our lives.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about Pray to Love. There's so many great things you've done, but Pray to Love is kind of your baby right now, and
It is.
it's steadily growing even more and more. And you have a documentary coming out?
Hopefully.
Hopefully
Hopefully.
next
I've been
year?
working on
Okay.
it.
Well, let's go back to the photographs and the
Yeah.
paintings and the history behind the series that you've started.
Well, what became the Nun series, as I call it, Pray to Love, Love to Pray, is one of their mottos. So my aunt was a closed cloister nun. She came from Wheeling, West Virginia, and went to Annecy, France, and lived half of her life in the closed cloister monastery in the Alps, the French Alps. So to me, it was like the sound of music.
Yes.
And when I was probably in my 30s, I started being able to go over there and visit her. And every few years, I returned to visit her. And each time I went, it dispelled, I think, some things that I grew up thinking, like, oh, how could those women be happy behind walls? How could they have joy? And they did.
Yeah.
They also had the vow of poverty and the vow of silence.
Wow.
So I was thinking, well, surely
Is that possible?
that's not possible and stuff. But as I got to know them and their charism, which is like their spirituality, these layers started coming off too, where I was like, wow, I get it now. I get that even more. And and then I was able to take those things slowly and apply that in my life too.
Yeah.
How to find peace when there's chaos. And so it's been a whole learning process.
Wow.
So those photographs started turning into paintings over time.
Right.
For a lot of reasons. I wanted to bring awareness to these women because they are struggling to survive for many reasons. It's our culture today, institutions, the church, things like that. It's a struggle for them. And because they live as a contemplative life, quiet, people aren't going to know about them.
that's true.
So I'm hoping that this will bring awareness to the visitation order, which started over 400 years ago. It was St. Francis de Sales and St. Jane de Chantal. It was a pretty bold thing. They started this order of nuns, which was the first order to come along, where you could be a widow and not in top-notch health either.
Really?
So that was pretty radical
That
for
was 400
over
years ago?
400
Wow.
years ago.
Yeah, that is.
And it was the Silesian spirituality, which is, he wrote the treatise of love and all of these things, and it's how to find peace in the midst of everyday living. You know, the extraordinary in the ordinary. And it still is just as relevant now, right? That we need to have those contemplative places in our heart and in our minds and in our life to be able to just kind of navigate through it.
Yeah. You said it was 20 years of photographs?
Oh, right. So back and forth, the collection kind of came together, where those strong pieces came. So that is what the original collection came. Okay. I did a show at the Arts Company, a gallery show with it. And when that was coming to an end, I was actually kind of like, oh, no, I don't really want these just to, like, if they sell and it's all dispersed, you know, kind of became this thing like, oh, I don't want to let this go.
It needs to stay as a unit.
Yeah, and feeling like there's something more to this. And I didn't really quite know what it was, but I did have a dream. And it was the next day, and I told my son the next morning, I had a very crazy dream, but what if we took this collection, these paintings, to the monasteries here in the United States so that those nuns can see it, because they're never going to get out and see it.
That's true, yeah.
They're not going to see it in the galleries. They're not going to, you know, they will not see it. And I thought, oh, okay, that's a strange one. But and then it was 10 days or 2 weeks later, I got an email from the Mother Superior in Brooklyn, New York, asking if I would bring paintings up there for an exhibit.
Have you reached out for that request? Or did she just out of oh, you're kidding me.
So that was the confirmation.
Oh my, there's your answer, right?
Yes, so we were talking, I was like, well, how did you know about this in Nashville, Tennessee? She said, well, I was about to do a retreat in Annecy, and I typed in Annecy, and Pray to Love popped up because the article was in the Nashville Arts Magazine. And all those little connected dots.
And
Isn't
I
that crazy?
Annecy has Anne in it, so.
Oh. Yeah.
You know.
Annecy, of course I don't say it right,
no,
especially Tennessee.
Yeah, that's true.
Probably 5 more syllables on it than it's supposed to.
We got to drag it out a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
And so that's how that started. And so we brought the exhibit up to Brooklyn, New York, which there's a monastery in the middle of Brooklyn that nobody would know about. 7 acres in the middle of Brooklyn.
7 acres. That's a large space.
And they're struggling, you know. So, you know, they're aging, and there aren't any new nuns, postulants. So, hoping that this will bring about that.
Yeah, there are
I'm
probably
sure that there's a lot of women that it would, you know, the contemplative life like that would.
Yeah, because we're not all made for the fast-paced digital life that, you know, we've become accustomed to.
Yeah, I mean, we're all given whatever it is that our gifts are.
Exactly.
And our purpose.
And silence to pray, is meant for some.
What is the quote St. Francis de Sales says? It's, be you and be that well.
Oh, yeah, that's well said.
Yeah, one of his quotes.
We forget that. We always do. We get so caught up in trying to fit into the society that we live, we forget about who we are and our purpose in life.
Yeah, grounding. I think that all those influences and things that come at us too, and social media and all of that, my heart really goes out for younger people too, to be able to have an opportunity, if they can, to find their grounding, you know, to be grounded. And then when those things do come your way, you're able to have some filters maybe for it. Yeah,
that's the biggest thing, the filters.
Yeah, it's really hard.
Block out the noise and
the things that aren't true and that aren't going to be good for your life, you know.
True. So you did Brooklyn.
Oh, yes, so after
it
that.
didn't stop there.
That's right. After that, it started, and so we recorded it. My son went with me to help. So we started filming that. And that is actually how this whole thing of like, okay, this would be a great little documentary art piece.
Right.
You know, because it's art and it's documenting these women and also documenting their take on what the art is, you know, in the spiritual way. So they wrote the captions for the paintings.
Oh, that's awesome.
I sent them color copies of the paintings when the body of work was finished, and they meditated on that, and that's how the captions came to be.
What a collaboration.
Yeah. So see, there's this whole, which explains why I had writer's block. I could not, for the life of me. The titles were fine, but after that, I was just like, it wasn't meant for me to do.
So let's talk about that. What you're putting together, how, you know, you say it's taking a long time, but it has to be done the right way because this is your legacy, I guess you would think. Yeah.
They're also believe in this too. So it's not just me, and I certainly don't want to let those women down.
Oh, yeah.
A whole community of wonderful women, you know, that devote their life to prayer and to pray for the world and have so many messages for us. So I don't want to let them down.
Yeah, it's obvious in a body of work when the artist is into the work wholeheartedly. There's more than just trying to sell some artwork and make a name for yourself. You're doing it because that's what you were meant to do.
Yes, that's really helped, I think, over those little layers with this. It's really helped me see and feel and have more confidence too, because it has given my work a purpose.
Yeah.
That is not about other things.
It's so beautiful too. I mean, I've only got to see a few pieces in person, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's about 40 pieces in the collection.
And you say it's growing, right? So
well, I still have so many more I want to do, but that will be maybe the next chapter.
Okay.
Right now I want to really be working on this documentary piece to get it finished.
Okay.
And pretty much the footage has been gathered, pretty much, you know, from traveling around to the different monasteries. And then I went back to France last June and was able to film there at the monastery. So, you know, it's also a trust factor that they have entrusted me to be inside their walls too, and to document the beauty that really emulates what their lives are.
Yeah, to be so secluded and to allow you to come in and be that voice that goes out to the world to share what the life they live is, that's a big deal.
Which I think artistically that part's easy, really, because you know, even the way they walk, you know, they're very graceful.
Right.
And they wear the long black habits, so to me that looks like a painting right there.
Oh, of course, for sure. And so the paintings haven't left the United States. They've stayed in country. They haven't been to Annecy.
No, they haven't been back to Annecy. I hope to bring the exhibit there.
Yeah, that would be fitting.
And then to do that international thing, which is probably a whole nother, but hopefully by then we'll have that film portion so it could go with the exhibit. So then that's more that multimedia.
Well, and it helps
type of
generate exposure and, you know.
Well, and also the way our culture is now too. I mean, it's not just visual, you know, now the whole world with film and with sound and with the stories, it kind of opens up this whole other avenue of being able to express.
True. Yeah, and then somebody that couldn't see the exhibit could at least watch the documentary and learn kind of the same things. Maybe not get that same experience up close with a painting, but they're still going to be touched by the story that you tell.
Right, look when the artists that we love, and then, John Singer Sargent for me personally, and then when the exhibit was up in Chicago, I was just like, whoa, just to see it in person, it was like, wow.
It's so different, isn't it?
Yeah.
To go and see an exhibit of an artist that you've only seen in books or nowadays online, to see that work in person makes such a difference.
Yeah, that it's influenced us.
I've noticed that with artists I follow on Instagram or Facebook, and not really crazy about what I've seen on their pages, but somehow I end up at their exhibit and I see their work in person.
Right.
And it's night and day sometimes. You know, some works just don't translate well through a screen.
Well, especially if that two-dimensional, if there's texture to it, you know,
Yes.
that comes from it. And even with what you're doing, there's
Yeah.
a lot of layers
Yes.
and texture to it. It's it's the
Yeah.
three-dimensional surface.
And
It's not flat.
Exactly, and a lot of times that's the reaction I get from somebody that maybe hasn't seen my work in person, and they somehow love it enough to buy it, and I ship it to them, and I love the email I get that says, "This is even better in person than what I saw online." You know, I don't know how many times that's happened. but
Especially
I
with
love
what
it.
it is that you do, because there are so many like layers and the whole process of
Well,
what
thank
you
you.
do. Then when you have it, you're holding it, or you see it, then I think that appreciation of the diligence, because
Thank you.
I certainly can, but I'm always trying to figure it out too.
You know, that's the thing.
Look
It's
at
the
it.
mystery.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks they
Yeah.
know how it
How do you
works,
do
and then
that?
they're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same with your paintings, though. I think that's a lot of people. They want to simplify what you do, and it's not a simple process.
No,
There's so
no.
much technique, so much knowledge that you put into your paintings to give them that glow, that focus, and the impressionist look all at once.
Yeah,
It's
and I
really
think
nice.
that's just maybe working with it over the years, where things do evolve.
Yeah. And artists, they're fortunate artists that can figure out whatever medium they're working in really fast. But the ones that have done something for 5, 10 years, they're at a different level.
Mastering it,
Yeah.
maybe in a
It's-
way.
It's almost easy to them without being easy.
Yes, well, just
Yeah.
like John Singer Sargent, what always amazed me about him was watercolor, oil,
Gosh, watercolors.
drawing,
Yes.
sculpture. It's just like, he was totally an artist all the way around. Landscape,
Fun stuff.
portraiture.
Yeah. To be able to
Anatomy.
do all that, yes. And was he an artist that started early?
Oh,
In
yes,
life.
yes. And in museums as a child,
Gosh.
Exposed
Yeah.
and stuff to it.
If more
Just
of
that
our
exposure.
world could be exposed to that at an earlier age, there's too many people that are not until late in life, and then they feel like it's too late, but it's not.
Where the exhibit was up in Toledo, Ohio, and the museum, the art museum, is free to the public, so that
Wow.
art is exposed. The exposure is for everybody, everybody.
So it should be.
Yes, as it should be.
I do
Right.
appreciate the Frist here in Nashville.
Oh,
does
it's
the free
fabulous.
events pretty often. So it does
I love the Frist and the building itself, just the whole
gorgeous
architecture
Art
of that.
Deco style,
Yeah.
beautiful architecture.
That's a treasure for Nashville.
We are fortunate. And then we have Leaper's Fork at
Well,
where you live.
that's become a nice little art hubbub, and I did the first art shows there in Leaper's Fork,
That's right. You started a gallery.
and that was maybe 15. Well, it was in the mid-90s,
Was it
mid to
really?
late 90s, and then I started putting group shows together, and with other local artists, and then I did a show also that was because I was involved in the music business also, of fellow musicians, people that also did artwork, such as Michael McDonald, does
Oh, wow,
great
yeah.
watercolors, Steve Warner, watercolor, Marty Stewart, photography,
I forget about these artists.
Kim
through
Carnes,
The paintings. Yeah.
and Bill Miller, Native American, does fabulous work. So I started putting those group shows together, and
Wow.
then opened, the first gallery with two other artists, Butler Steltmeyer and Lisa Fox. It was the two of us. And Lisa still has it.
And that's why it's called the Copper Fox.
Well, that's Leapers Creek Gallery.
Oh, it's Leaper's Creek. So
And so now my work and Nathan's work is at Copper Fox
Okay, that's where I got
Gallery,
the
which
Copper
is
Fox.
like
Okay.
Puckett's is in between.
Yes.
Yeah, big town. But anyway, it's become a great little hubbub of artists now, so that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Anne, we're going to end it right there. Thank you for
Okay.
coming on Unvarnished.
Oh,
I enjoyed having you.
thank
It was
you.
great talking about your work, and we'll share all your contact information on the video when it comes out.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Thanks for watching
thank you.
Unvarnished.